At least 6 Palestinians have been killed in an Israeli army raid in occupied West Bank. Israeli forces have stormed a refugee camp in Jenin. Fighting broke out between Israeli soldiers and Palestinian gunmen after a house was besieged. We're going to go live to Sara Khairat, who's following developments for us from Ramallah. Sara, the numbers are starting to increase.
That's right. They've been increasing in the last hour or so, and now we have confirmed at least 6 Palestinians have been killed. They're mostly in their 20s, bar one who's a 49-year-old that the Israeli media is reporting that is linked to an attack that was carried out against Israeli settlers just over a week ago. We've also had a rise in the number of those injured. Now it's standing to at least 15 wounded. 2 of them are critically injured, and we are likely to see that number to rise. It was a big Israeli raid. They're now retreating from Jenin refugee camp. There are helicopters hovering, Israeli helicopters, after a drone of theirs was downed by Palestinians in Jenin refugee camp. That was happening as another raid was carried out south of Nablus at another refugee camp where they detained 2 young men. Those 2 men are said to be the sons of the 49-year-old that was killed in Jenin refugee camp. All of it said to be linked to this attack that happened last Sunday in Khairat, where a Palestinian shot and killed 2 Israeli settlers that were cutting through to go to an illegal Israeli settlement where they were heading. And now this area is an area of tension. Jenin camp itself is also a place where 10 Palestinians were killed just in January in a big Israeli raid. So we're seeing a rise in these raids, Israeli forces raiding Jenin as well as other areas in occupied West Bank, with the largest number of deaths just this year. In the beginning of this year, we're looking at more than 65 Palestinians killed.
Sara, you and the teams there have been reporting on an increasing number of attacks on both sides over the last several weeks or so. Is there a sense that there is a significant escalation?
Well, that is the case with raids, with demolitions, with even Israeli settler attacks averaging at 3 every single day just this year alone. The UN says this is the highest number in more than a decade. It's also the highest number in more than a decade for the beginning of a year to see that many demolitions. We're at more than 2,000 people that have been wounded in just the first 2 months of this year alone. This is at a time where the international community has condemned this rise in numbers of deaths. It's also condemned the new Israeli government at wanting to expand its settlements here in occupied West Bank. Now, it's worth noting that one of the people that was killed in this Jenin refugee camp was a member of the Palestinian Authority security. Now, we're looking at people that are increasingly becoming armed within the Palestinian community in occupied West Bank as well as occupied East Jerusalem. We're looking at lone wolf attacks that have been carried out against Israelis since the beginning of the year, at a time when the Israeli government, its most right-wing government, that has settler members that are ministers that are being accused of provoking such sentiment, especially amongst Israeli settlers when it comes to Palestinians in the occupied West Bank. There was also a meeting that was held recently in Jordan, with a meeting that was initiated by the US, by the United States, with Jordanian and Egyptians and Israeli as well as Palestinian Authority members present to de-escalate those tensions. We have had a reaction just coming in the last 20 minutes from the PLO, saying the occupation government has a clear decision to open a war against the Palestinian people. It says that it's continuing its massacres, settlements, demolition of homes and burning villages. Now, that's the same rhetoric that it often says whenever these raids are carried out. But the situation on the ground now has been extremely tense. And just earlier today, my colleague Nida was in Khairat speaking to people that had been attacked overnight by Israeli settlers, a family, while Israeli soldiers were watching. So this is another thing that's been brought up also by the international community, saying that the Israeli government, this new Israeli government, needs to ensure that soldiers or those that are standing and watching, that this has to come to an end.
Sara Khairat talking to us from Ramallah. Sara, thank you very much indeed.